Hello, everyone. Welcome to Day 4 of the European Research Days 2024 Oceania, a flagship event of EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand, organized in collaboration with the Delegation of European Union to Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific. Thank you for joining us from different parts of the globe. The first 3 days, if you have been part of it, has been very interactive, and looking at the speaker lineup for today, I guess will not be any much different. So thank you for joining. As you are aware, the European Research Day focuses on providing the research community with information and support for scientific exchange and collaboration with Europe. So as a part of this collective, we have a 5-day event, which each day addresses a specific theme and is intended for a certain target audience. And today's theme, as you are aware, is about early and mid-career researchers. We have an amazing speaker lineup for today. I'll introduce them as we move ahead with our agenda. But again, thank you to our speakers and our panelists for their availability, especially for those which is very early in the morning, joining us from Europe. We are very eager to hear from all of you. And I'm Nishant Sanilya. I'm the regional coordinator for EURAXESS. For those who have joined us for the first time, I guess now you are very well averse what I'm going to say. EURAXESS is an initiative of the European Commission that addresses barriers to the mobility of researchers and enhances scientific collaboration between Europe and the rest of the world. There are a multitude of things that we do. We provide free information about European research, career opportunities, international collaboration, and networking possibilities. And since all of you are watching this on your laptop or your phone, I'd encourage you to please type EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand on the social media of your choice. Could be Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. And please consider following us there, because we are aware that we live in an information overload age. So we only post once a day with information that are pertinent to you. Now, of course, you can as well share about this event with the handle #ERD Oceania. Moving on to today's session, just to give you the running order, we'll begin with a much anticipated panel on early and mid-career researchers and international research collaboration. After which, we will have a special session brought to you in collaboration with Taylor and Francis on publishing in academic journals. Of course, because we have a dense session again today, I'd encourage all of you to please ask your questions while our speakers and our panelists are speaking, and we will come back and take your questions at the end of each intervention. And please use the Q&A function and not the chat function in the Zoom interface. It allows us to monitor the questions more easily. Now, I think without further ado, what I'll do is I'll quickly pass the platform to our amazing moderator for the panel, Ms. Jane Edwards, who is the Director for Assurance and Statutory at Universities New Zealand. She's going to lay some background of the panel and introduce the panelists for the panel on early career and mid-career researchers and international research collaboration. I think with that, I'll pass it to you, Jane, and the panel is in your hands now.
Thank you, Nishant. And I'd just like to add my welcome to everyone who's Zooming in this evening. From my perspective, it's 8 o'clock at night in New Zealand. So yeah, welcome. And because I'm in New Zealand, kia ora koutou. So Nishant's really just gone through the structure for today. And so what I'm going to be doing really is just trying to get the best out of these fabulous panelists that we've got, so that you can get as much information as you need in order to be able to really progress your career as an early or mid-career researcher. So the way that we're going to do this is that I've got some questions for the panel. They'll respond, and then we'll be able to take some questions from anyone online who's got some burning issues they'd like to discuss and get some advice on. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually get all the panelists to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about them. They're all allowed about 3 minutes. Ashiqur, I know you can talk, so you're allowed 3 minutes. I'll be keeping an eye on you. And so I'm going to start off by handing over to Dr. Gian Maria Greco to start us off with a 3-minute introduction.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Nishant and EURAXESS. I'm Gian Maria Greco. I am the chair of the Marie Curie Alumni Association. For those of you who are not familiar with the MCAA, we are an organization that gathers together former and current beneficiaries of the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions program of the European Commission, mostly postdoctoral and doctoral researchers. So beneficiaries of the postdoctoral Marie Skłodowska-Curie, and the doctoral network MSCA calls. And we advocate for researchers, especially for early and mid-career researchers, exactly the topic of the day. We work a lot by pushing the voice of and making the voice of the early and mid-career researchers heard. That is a key topic for us. And that is probably the kind of leitmotif of whatever I'm going to say today. We need to have a seat at the table. And all of these organizations, all of these that are represented today, are doing that. And several organizations, international public bodies, are providing a seat at the table, but it's still not enough. So my message, introductory message, is that early and mid-career researchers need to be heard, but not just heard, need to have a seat at the table so that they can be proactively, since day one, be there. It's not an afterthought, but it's something done since the very beginning, or whatever planning for research, for innovation, everything, we have to be there. It's a very general overall introduction. A bit of a political statement, probably.
Thank you so much. You're right. It's really important that everyone has a seat at the table at this part of their career. And thank you so much for your introduction. I'd like to pass on to Dr. Jordan Pitt now to introduce himself. Jordan's coming to us from Sydney.
Hello, I'm Jordan Pitt. Yes, I'm a descendant of the Birragubba people, which is up near far north Queensland, and I'm the current chair of the Early Mid-Career Researcher Forum in Australia. The forum is run by and for early and mid-career researchers across science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in Australia, in association with the Australian Academy of Science. The forum has a nominal membership of 6,000 people, who are not only people from 0 to 15 years post-PhD, but also those who have similar research experience in industry and government as well. So I've kind of broadened out our definition of what an EMCR is. We provide community and, as Gian said, voice to our membership through our contributions to policy submissions, a biennial conference, and through involvement with other activities like other early career workshops, which take place in all of our disciplines here in Australia, at least, but I'm sure it's similar elsewhere. We contribute to policy submissions to Australia's funding agencies, such as the Australian Research Council and the National Health and Medical Research Council, to name the big ones. Our biennial conference is a chance to build the community of early and mid-career researchers and help deal with the issues of isolation and lack of support, particularly with the kind of heterogeneity of academic experience you might have when you go through a postdoc, and do some professional development. I am one of the executives of the forum, who are 13 of some of the most dedicated advocates for issues facing early and mid-career researchers, with a deep focus on improving equity, diversity, and inclusion within academia and the research sector more broadly, which I think us as early and mid-career researchers are really well placed to do. A lot of the diversity issue is exacerbated, I guess, with seniority in our institutions. Final note, the forum is a Category 3 member of the International Science Council, where we also engage with international research communities and further pursue our advocacy of EMCRs in Australia. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jordan. Really informative. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions coming your way when it comes to helping with funding bids. I'd now like to pass on to Dr. Kristie Cameron, and Kristie's also in New Zealand. So over to you, Kristie.
Thank you very much, Jane. My name is Kristie Cameron. I am an early career researcher. I am also a lecturer at Unitec, which is a polytechnic in New Zealand, but I'm not sure what you'd call that overseas, whether it be like a vocational institute, that kind of thing. So we teach like vet nurses and more carpentry and that kind of thing. So I'm the only co-chair of the ECR forum that is actually coming from somewhere where we do more applied research, applied teaching. So I'm the co-chair of the Royal Society Te Aparangi ECR forum. I share my role with two others from universities, and Gurgay is from the Liggins Institute. Just a little bit about us. We launched in 2016, so we're relatively young. And we represent the national voice of the New Zealand's ECR community, and we hope to also celebrate achievements and contributions, as well as giving rise to voice, which seems to be a theme of the other speakers too. We operate under the auspices of the Royal Society Te Aparangi, which is where all our scientific fellows live, and we act as a national entity to represent the knowledge, expertise and perspectives of New Zealand ECRs to the society and also to the stakeholders. So we kind of sit in the middle, and we've got lots of tendrils out to different communities, including the public, our stakeholders and other ECR communities through universities, Crown Research Institutes, private enterprises, and of course our Māori-owned institutes as well. I'm not sure if everybody has the same definition for an ECR, because we cover emerging, early, mid-career. So we're really like everybody except esteemed fellows, it seems to be. But ours it's a little bit loose in terms of it being the 10 years since completing your highest research qualification, which is normally a PhD, but it can be loosened to be a master's, especially when we're talking about polytechnics and private institutions. And we also have a very special criteria in that parental and other forms of leave are deducted from that 10-year post-qualification time limit as well. I'm an ECR that fulfills all those kinds of boxes in terms of during my ECR stint, I finished my PhD, I bought a house and became a mum and got married and all that kind of stuff in terms of being an ECR. So my passion kind of lies in supporting other people that kind of have to jump through those hoops at the same time, because we are at this age of where that happens. And so I think we have an obligation to support people going through those kinds of things, because not only are we creating the next generation of families, of people, of learners, we're actually creating the new generation of scientists as well. So we need people to be well-rounded and actually like what they do and continue to do it. So we are a committee of about 16 members, 3-year term, and our main goals, and I think I'll touch on it as I talk through the panel questions as well, is people, voice, and of course knowledge. We've got people, we've got knowledge, so we need to have the people and the knowledge come together and give information to our ECRs so that they can be better researchers and continue in their chosen field. So thank you.
Kia ora. Thanks very much, Kristie. And finally, I'd like to pass on to Dr. Ashiqur Rahman. Over to you, Ashiqur.
Thank you, Gian. Distinguished panelists, esteemed colleagues, friends, and those who are watching. It is indeed a privilege to join this vital discussion on early and mid-career researchers and international research collaboration. As the president of the Erasmus Mundus Association and alumnus of both the Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters Program and the Maris Curie Actions PhD Program, I'm deeply honored to share insights from my personal journey and the collective vision of our organization. Let's start like globally, early and mid-career researchers form a significant proportion of research community. Approximately 65% of active researchers are within their early or mid-career stages, like me. So they are driving force behind much of today's innovative research, accounting for a majority of publications and collaborative projects. However, only about 20% of early and mid-career researchers have access to sustained international collaboration opportunities. I'll put it that way, that despite evidence showing that research with international co-authorship is up to 60% more impactful in terms of citations and a real-world application. So early and mid-career researchers often face barriers like limited funding that is quite common in research life, visa challenges, as we are mobile, let's say, really like research group are always mobile people, and also it restricted access to global networks, which hindered their ability to fully participate in international projects. As the voice of over 35,000 Erasmus Mundus alumni and students, we from our network, from our association, MI is deeply committed to empowering early and mid-career researchers through global networking opportunities. Maybe you know that we facilitate connections among alumni and students across over 179 countries, creating fertile ground for collaborations. We are also working towards skill building initiatives from our network. Let's put it that way, that we focus training sessions and a workshop focusing on research methodologies, grant writing, interdisciplinary collaboration, ensuring that early and mid-career researchers are equipped for the demands of international research. And also we do advocacy and representation of this group of people for better funding, for mobility support and inclusion policies at the European Commission and other international platforms, ensuring that the voice of early and mid-career researchers are heard in decision-making process. So I'll also echo what Dr. Gian mentioned, that from our side, we also envision a future where every early and mid-career researchers, regardless of their geographical location or discipline, they should have access to the resources, networks, and mentorships that needed to excel their career. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashiqur. And I think you're right. You know, it doesn't really matter about where you're located geographically. We're proving that today, that you can have your collaborations irrespective of which part of the world that you're located in. So thanks very much for bringing that up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start running through the questions, and I will ask the questions of the panel, and we'll just go through each panel member one by one, who will have an answer for each of the questions. So I'll move on to the first thing. And one of the things that when I was thinking about this is I think it's actually a really exciting part of your career when you're beginning as an early career researcher and when you're starting to establish yourself as a mid-career researcher. So it's a really exciting time, but it's also quite daunting. And I'm sort of thinking, you know, what is it you consider to be the most important considerations at the beginning of a research career? And so from your experience, can you talk us through opportunities and networks that you're aware of that are available for early and mid-career researchers and how they can take advantage of that both domestically and internationally? So that's a long question. If you need me to repeat it, please let me know. Gian, Maria, I'll pass on to you first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Indeed, quite a packed question and several points to go through in such a short time. Well, I'll talk based on my experience, personal experience, but also based on the you know, the work that we do within our own organization. Yeah, so being an early or early mid-career, especially early career researchers, is such a wonderful period of our life, and there is plenty of energy and hope, and there are some activities that indeed we think that are beneficial and that should be kept in mind. For sure, one is to try to build, use the time and build networks, not just one, several networks, depending on what the different you know, activities of the researchers, because that is the stage, the early and mid-career stage. It's precisely when one is starting to explore and build their own careers, their own profile. And that requires a lot of shared knowledge, contacts, interfacing with other people, with colleagues, with other early and mid-career researchers, with whom they can, in the future become co-authors, develop new joint projects or interdisciplinary projects, and not, but also more experienced researchers, colleagues, from whom they can then learn through a mentorship-mentee relationship in a positive way. So building networks is probably one of the most exciting parts of being an early and mid-career researcher. So what is available out there, I'll just mention our organization and another organization, it's Eurodoc. The Eurodoc is really Eurocentric in this case. And because it's the federation of all the national organizations of doctoral candidates from the different European organizations. It's a close partners that we have. But we are much wider. We have 35 chapters all around the world, regional chapters all around the world. And joining organizations like ours, not necessarily arts, but like arts, can provide the network, the training on transversal skills that one may require, or that mutual learning, or they can join. In this case, with us, they can join specific programs that I'll be able to talk to about them later on, such as we have a mentorship platform for assisting researchers in writing a narrative CV. That is a specific way that now the research is moving towards, so as to encourage what are the different wealth of information and experiences that one gains over time, and that may not be well reflected in a dry standard CV. For instance, there are several initiatives out there, some again that we have been putting out there, and I encourage researchers to look for organizations, associations of alumni like the Erasmus Mundus organization, or other local, national, regional, if there are, because that is a way to build network of assistance from peers and to find other activities and suggestions.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And I suppose a lot of that is just don't be frightened, just get out there and have a crack at it. Someone's got to do it. So Jordan, how would you respond to the question? Would you like me to repeat it?
No, I have it. Thank you.
Great.
Well prepared. Yeah, that's probably another tip, be prepared. So I guess first I wanted to say good job for being here. If you're here, I don't think I ever thought about coming to one of these things when I was just studying my after I finished my PhD. So kind of want to acknowledge that this is kind of hindsight talking. Like, I don't know if I would have thought about where I am now when I started, and just kind of acknowledge that and be okay with that kind of uncertainty, because I think it's going to take you in different ways. And in talking to a lot of people, like, although we might try and optimize for our career, like, our personal lives are very important as well. And so they're going to affect our decisions quite rightly. And they have done for mine. I guess in terms of advice, my considerations thinking back were really just about impact and visibility. And I've left those terms very vague because I really mean impact broader than just publications, right? Like, I think, what kind of end result out of your work do you actually want to see in the real world? Like, do you want to make some contribution to solving some particular problem? Or I guess one that I'm thinking about very much now is, like, how do you want to improve some people's lives or the communities, or uplift communities in particular, in my role at the University of Sydney. So just something a bit broader and like some kind of nice end goal that actually means something to you. So that's the kind of what part, but then there's the so what part, which is the visibility. And it's really great if you're doing great work. I'm sure you are, but if no one knows about it, then then you're going to have a lot of problems. And I don't like that I'm giving the corporate advice, because but that does tend to. But I am pragmatic, so fight the good fight, but also do the right stuff, play the game a little bit. Unfortunately, and I guess I second Gian's point about networks, and I would also go a bit further and say support networks as well, and that can be like especially I'm Aboriginal, so finding other academics that have kind of similar issues to what I'm having, or kind of just support networks is really important, especially those equity and diversity groups, I think. And I didn't specify any methods for the impact and visibility, quite importantly, because I think you've got to find what you actually enjoy doing, right? And there are a lot of pathways to visibility. It's not just doing social media, although, that's probably a novel way too. You should probably maybe look into that if you're even somewhat good in front of a camera. Yeah, so and kind of so that you enjoy the process, because that's going to be really important. In terms of like opportunities, I found the opportunities, unfortunately, have been the ones where I did something for someone, like where I actually kind of like taking on these service roles, like being the chair, or like being involved in the EMCR forum, or organizing workshop conferences for early career workshops for discipline-specific conferences, has been really good. And it's because it gives you get that broad perspective in just dealing with people, but also learning about what they do, and you make networks that way. And I think people are a lot more on board and think you're kind of someone to collaborate with. If you're kind of already doing something, you're seen as someone who does something. So kind of building that brand is kind of nice as well. As for support networks, there's the international ones. I would also think, I know that I've recently learned about at my university, there's university-based early career researcher groups as well. They're probably good to get a part of. It's always hard, I think, for an ECR to try and pull themselves away from the desk and the paper, but actually that's where some of that, like a little bit of time, can actually make a big difference. But it is quite it's not a linear pathway to impact, I would say, or to results, or it can be a bit long term. But you make a bit of an investment now and you can pay off very much later. Yeah, and Australia has a lot of grant programs for EMCRs to attend and organize workshops. I guess the premier one that I'm affiliated with somewhat through the Academy of Science is our Theo Murphy initiative. So would recommend that to anyone who's interested in attending a conference for EMCR as an EMCR, or also organizing a workshop for EMCRs in their area.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jordan. It's actually a really good point. There's several scholarship funds out there which will assist people to travel to attend conferences and present papers. And that's just another avenue to really network. And when I was talking to my husband about what I was doing today, and he's a salesperson, and his response was network, network, network. So that goes across corporate and academia. So now on to you, Kristie. I'm sure you've got some wise words for us.
Thank you. So I sat here today and I thought about what I would give somebody as advice as a early career researcher, or an emerging career researcher, someone who hasn't quite done that first publication or quite finished their master's or PhD. And I thought about the most important thing, and it's the most contradictory thing I could think of, which is to take every opportunity, but also be able to say no. I think the consideration of well-being and stability for ECRs is really important. Especially in New Zealand, as PhDs are seen as inexpensive labour, and they don't always carry on after a PhD. There's no guarantee of a job or anything like that. So the best way to combat that is to understand where you sit in terms of the landscape, which I'm going to follow that up with. In New Zealand is incredibly difficult because they just decided to revamp the science system. So there's no auditing process or anything that we have right now. So it's just great for new researchers trying to navigate their life, the university's life or the institution's life, and the greater science system. So back to taking every opportunity as it comes. So funding, collaborate on someone else's grant. Collaborate with anyone you can, even if it's in the smallest capacity. I've published on papers about lichens because I did the statistics. So you don't have to be the ideas person. You can be the helper. You can be the editor. You can be the ethics person. You can do anything. Just get on that paper, get on anything that has to be written in terms of proposals, grant applications, and get that experience under your belt. Start off small. So start off with like a contestable internal funding scheme. So, go for $2,000 to get an RA to help you with a little bit of data collection. Start off small. As soon as you get the smaller grant, you can get the bigger grant. I mean, everything comes down to money because everything costs money. So you need to be able to show that you're a great researcher, you've got great ideas and all this. You actually have to get somewhere first. So the best way to do that is just to get the wee grants. And you might collaborate with somebody who's got a grant, and then you can use that as a stepping stone to your own grant. The other thing I would say is patience. I agree with Jordan in that visibility is incredibly important. I'm not very good at that, and I don't like social media, so I don't want to put myself out there. So I try and let my research speak for itself, but it takes a lot of patience. And I mean, I do animal welfare, animal behavior, so my stuff is quite small, like it's not hugely impactful. Although I did write the latest greyhound paper where we've just banned greyhound racing, so that's really, really cool. See, patience, it pays off. So the other question is, from your experience, what opportunities and networks are available for ECRs? So I echo what Jordan and Gian have said in terms of joining an ECR community around you. Join the community in your institution and utilise what they offer: webinars, workshops, networking opportunities. And New Zealand we have a conference every couple of years called Hippie Tomato, which is about growth, and it's a chance for ECRs to join together and have a voice, ask those questions, and then we learn what do ECRs want to know about, and so then we can cater for that group. So, for example, last time they wanted to know about Māori data sovereignty. Who owns that information? How do we go about talking about that information when it's really special to some people? And so we've gone on and we've organised some webinars about that. It is difficult to organise those kinds of things, getting people in the same room, and you're inevitably doing it on Zoom, but utilising that time as well. We also have like fellowships where you get bought out for your time to do a project. Those are really hard to get because we only have 20 of them and a gazillion researchers, so they're really, really hard to get. Again, collaborate, get that stepping stone. That's the biggest thing. And in terms of international joining together of minds, we do have somebody in the Global Academy, but we want to increase that. So we only have one person in the whole of the country that is part of the Global Academy as a current member. But we do have alumni, but we have one person. We'd like to increase that, and we know our greater support systems are very keen to make that happen and do some funding for them to get there. So we are still growing. And of course, as you'll know, Jordan, that you're part of this group and then you're going to move on and they kind of start again with the new people. So it's getting that rolling momentum going to support the ECRs as everything changes, as everything grows. So I guess my take-home message is to say yes to everything, but don't say so much that you drown. Take every opportunity. I know it's contradictory, but that's what we are. We're tenacious. As ECRs, we have this tenacity because this is how we got there, but we have to make sure that we don't drown in trying to progress. So well-being is really important. I'm going to end there. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kristie. Really good advice. So let me summarise. We've got one saying, yes, sometimes you have to say no, and someone saying take every opportunity, but look after yourself at the same time. So, really good advice. Ashiqur, I'm sure that you can add to that. So, over to you.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you so much for having this question on the table. This is very important for early career researchers like us. So let's put it that way, that it is indeed an exciting and transformative time for ECRs, but also one filled with challenges and uncertainties when they just get into this career. So I'll highlight based on my journey and the work we do at the Erasmus Mundus Association. Let's say a few key considerations and opportunities for early career researchers. Definitely, I will start like Gian, Maria, Jordan, and Kristie, what they meant about building a network early. This is something important. So collaboration, this is the cornerstone of impactful research. I do believe that early career researchers should actively seek connections with peers, mentors, and maybe senior researchers. If you're a PhD, go for having a relationship with the postdoc. This is always helping. So both within their institutions and across borders, joining research communities, attending conferences, and participating in workshops can greatly expand these networks. But you have to be choosy because there are a lot of things is happening in the world, and just don't go somewhere and join there. Try to understand what outcomes you could actually bring from there. Definitely, I would also highlight defining research goals because I believe that this is essential for ECRs to identify their research interest and, of course, to align them with global challenges or areas of high social impact. At the same time, learning to navigate funding opportunities is important. Securing funding is often one of the most daunting tasks for early career researchers if you are from let's say low and middle income countries. This is always a challenge. So understanding how to write competitive grant proposals and identifying relevant funding opportunities, relevant funding bodies, whether domestic or international, this is critical. I would also highlight to go for focusing on skill development. Early career researchers, of course, beyond technical expertise, we should prioritize developing transferable skills such as communication, project management, and of course, leadership. So these skills not only enhance, let's say, research outcomes, but also prepare researchers for multidisciplinary collaborations and career transitions. As Kristie clearly mentioned, that we don't know what is coming next. After PhD, no guarantee for job, no guarantee for university position. This is something important. As she clearly mentioned that everything comes down to money. I put it that way, that money matters in research life. Let's be optimistic. Let's go for our opportunities and networks available according to my personal and organizational point of view. There are domestic opportunities. Let's say national research grants. Most countries currently have funding agencies offering grants for early career researchers in Europe. This is the European perspective. For instance, programs by national science councils or academies, they often support early stage projects. At the same time, in European countries, we have seen that universities supported initiatives. Many universities, they are offering seed funding, incubator programs, and faculty mentorship networks, that is especially for young researchers who are at the very early stage of their research career. We can talk about the international opportunities. Erasmus Plus program is one of the program. Let's make it very simple for Erasmus Mundus Joint Masters. We have seen that last 20 years, around 600 universities involved, more than 500 different programs they offered, and a huge amount of money invested for this Erasmus Plus programs. We can also talk about, let's say, Maris Kudosa Corrections, 145,000 plus researchers who get benefited from these funding supports. At the same time, let's say there are several international alumni networks. I would put it that way, that as a president of Erasmus Mundus Association, I'll tell students and who are like early career stage researchers, don't forget to join any network you love to join. Try to understand what they're doing. You'll find at least they're doing something minimal for you, but this could be something that you can gain, you can apply in your life, and you can have a network where you have like similar minded people are there. And this is important. You have a place where you can tell all types of ups and downs in life. You can tell someone and you can get benefits. Also, there are several research, global research organizations like platforms like a Global Young Academy and regional networks that often focus on empowering early careers researchers with funding and partnership. We could also think about digital platforms and open resources. Platforms like ResearchGate, ORCID, LinkedIn, they can be powerful tools for building an academic identity. Open access resources and online workshops enable, of course, researchers to stay updated with the latest methodologies and innovations in their field. So for early career researchers, to all early career researchers, the beginning of a research career is a time to dream big, plan strategically, and chase every opportunity to collaborate, learn, and innovate. With the right networks and support, the possibilities are limitless, both domestically and internationally.
Some great advice in there, Ashiqur. And it's certainly one of the things that's coming out is, yeah, funding is a big deal across every aspect, and it's all about the connections, and that's how you'll learn about what's available, and also consult with people who may be able to help you while you submit your funding bid. So we're running a little over time, so I'm going to combine the next couple of questions just to give you guys a bit of a warning. So what I wanted to ask you next was, we have talked about some of the challenges facing early and mid-career researchers. So if there's any other challenges that you see that we haven't already discussed, if you could also comment on them, and how you would potentially deal with them. But also look at it from, I'd also like to challenge everyone to look at the positives of moving into this space, and what kind of future do you see for early and mid-career researchers? So if you had unlimited resources, what would you be able to produce? What would you do? So that's a combination of questions again. And Gian, over to you.
Thank you, Jane. Especially the second part of the question is quite challenging. So let me start with the first. Most of the challenges that come to mind have been already challenges faced by early and mid-career researchers, have already been mentioned by my colleagues here. Just as a recap, those that I think and we think as an association, there are some of the most daunting ones and the most challenging ones, and that need some need urgently to be addressed, and some have been already starting to be addressed in some context. So one is for sure the work-life balance. This is mental health in general, which is not the same thing, but on the one hand is the work-life balance of early career researchers, mid-career researchers, because it's job insecurity may have an effect on how one can program, how one has the freedom at least to plan or to build a life outside work, and that can have an effect, a serious effect on mental health, to the point that the mental health of researchers being growing as a topic that in need of attention. I can mention here the REMO cost action, which I think concluded recently, is about to conclude, and that established a researcher mental health observatory. I encourage all the people here that are watching this video or attending here live, or that will watch the video, to Google and find out about the REMO. The other is having a proper mentorship relationship. That is quite challenging. Finding a mentor, a mentee, a relationship mentor-mentee that is effective. And there are several programs. So one, a few years ago, there was the referent program, the Rebecca program. Obviously, I'm talking about programs that are more or less Eurocentric. But we have the PEP-CV in this case, a program which is not Eurocentric because in this case it's run by us and it's open to everyone, not just to our members. This is open to everyone. It's basically a separate platform. You can have a mentor training you in this case, to how to write a narrative CV, but then from that you can start a relationship with the mentor, more experienced mentor. And so probably if I had unlimited fund, a support to a proper development of mentor-mentees and a program that would really care for mental health and work-life balance would be the actions to go. I know that there are a lot of others, I don't know, funding as mentioned so far several times, but I would go with that side, because if people are cared for and they feel valued, then they at least have the could have the possibility to express themselves in the work in their work side of their life. So a personal support to researchers, that's what I see as a problem, but also as the way to go where we can work about solutions.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, having that having a support network around you is absolutely essential to be successful. Jordan, have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Gian said. I guess the ones I wanted to mention, we kind of picked back up on, was that kind of heterogeneity. I guess what I was really getting at was that your experience of what an academic looks like, particularly as like an emerging researcher, I guess, is so much shaped by your PhD supervisor and / your postdoc supervisors. So building your networks and getting to know other more senior academics who you aren't reporting to will help you see kind of actually be able to manage and kind of actually see the difference between good and bad academics, or people who are maybe really firing up and people who are kind of winding down, I guess is my experience. I've seen that, but also I guess you can have very bad experiences as well. So that's something that people end up with. To mention something else that hasn't been mentioned, I just wanted to say, kind of echoing Kristie's point, that the students or PhDs, postdocs, they're kind of seen as cogs to do some job. And I think that makes it really difficult because, we're not really harnessing the energy of our young researchers and their enthusiasm and their real, I think, desire. Like all the ones that I meet, they really want to change the world, actually. But along the way, we have so many young researchers with amazing ideas just being told no. Just even by the people that are nominally there in the university to support them. And it's bizarre. I'd much rather hear them say, yes, and here's how you can do it, or yes, and here's something else to be aware of, rather than just the no. And of course, no needs to be there as an option, but I would like to see, if I had infinite resources, people just saying yes and more, even with the limited resources they have, because I think that's like the funding, definitely a problem. We definitely need more funding, but just thinking about the way the universities and academic research sectors talk to our early career researchers, I think would fix a lot of the frustrations that people have. Like, if people just started saying yes, and here's how you could do it, then I think people would actually be inspired to follow through their dreams, rather than just feeling like they're being crushed under the weight, I guess, of academia, and where we kind of beat the enthusiasm and energy out of people, which is really sad to see. And I've definitely seen the effects of that. And I guess thinking about the future, I just wanted to say, be good mentors, guys. It's up to us to really shape the future. We will be future academics, the ones who make it, and hopefully the ones who don't find more enjoyable things that they want to do. And I think part of having those transferable skills will help you do that. Yeah, but don't define yourself either by being what your job is, right? You're more than just your job. And that's kind of all the things I want to say.
Great, thanks very much. Yeah, succession planning is a big thing, isn't it, across the organisations that you're all part of, but also thinking about looking for mentors as an early career researcher and also becoming a mentor. Kristie, yeah, anything you'd like to add to that?
I guess not really more in terms of concepts. I mean, we've already talked about networking. You know, make some friends, network and collaborate. Especially in New Zealand, because we're moving towards having more industry linked and applied PhDs. So that's what industry, I'm saying that we loosely, want, but we produce these PhDs who aren't quite ready. So I think the answer is showing initiative and being forward thinking and making those relationships yourself. Don't wait for universities to go, okay, well, this person is wanting to do X, Y, Z. Go and make that connection yourself. I know that's really hard to do. Believe me, I know. And I think one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, or what I struggle with daily actually, is people don't work at the same rate as me. So I'm constantly waiting. I feel like this year has been the year of waiting, because people, you reach out to say, I'm doing this and it's really awesome. Would you like to collaborate? Would you like to be part of it? Would you like to be stakeholder? Or make a great end user? Can I get your opinion on something? And you're just not getting any traction, and it's quite stressful, and as you say, it makes you feel like it's not worth it. In saying that, when I did my PhD and you know, my life now where I do lots of research, it's awesome. I love it. Like, in terms of positivity, it is. I wouldn't ask for anything else. Every day is different. I couldn't see myself being anything except an academic. I mentor students, and you know, I don't have PhD students. I have one, but our institution doesn't have PhD students in science. So I have younger students who need more pastoral care, more helping in those basic things that a PhD student probably doesn't need. And I mentor my colleagues as well, because they're all from industry rather than straight through academia. And it's fantastic. It's positive. It's fostering. It's facilitating your career and your progression as well as theirs. If I had unlimited resources, it would be grants for everyone. But I would pay PhD students a living wage, and that met whatever criteria it needs to meet, whether they were domestic students, whether they were domestic workers, whether they were international workers. Because I'm not sure what it's like in other countries, but we definitely have a disconnect there between people coming into the country with expertise to do their PhD and they want to stay here, but we make it difficult, and we need to make it easier. We want intelligence and we want knowledge. We want all these people with skills. We need to work harder to keep them. And the last thing is that, and I think I'm working towards it with our ECR committee, but I think that it needs to be bigger, and that not just universities have things of note. You know, institutions that do cultural diversity studies, or CRIs, or the politics sector. We have stuff to offer, and I think there's a little bit of a lacking of equitability there. And I think if we join together more, if we actually had a unity between those two institutions, then we would actually foster our PhD students through, and then they have jobs at the end of it. So I think that would be really awesome if we could facilitate that with whatever resources was required. But if anybody ever said to me, do you know, would if you went back to your younger self, would you do the same thing? I'd say 100%. 100 million % would I do the same thing, because every day is awesome. You know, research is fun. Fundamentally, it's fun. And I guess that's me. Thank you.
I love the enthusiasm, Kristie. Ashiqur, so you get the final say on this, and you've got probably about 3 minutes, and then we've got a couple of questions I'd like to put to the panel that have come from some participants. So, Ashiqur.
Thank you, Jen. You know, it's a question with 4 different dimensions or avenues to explore, but I'll try to make it short. Let's say I'll try to make it summary what other panelists mentioned. Definitely, if I want to go for key challenges facing early and middle career researchers, funding uncertainty is one of the most significant hurdles that we have observed recently. Many funding programs, they prioritize like established researchers, not really for early stage researchers. So definitely it leaves like early or mid-career researchers in a competitive and often underfunded space that actually, let's say, stops for being motivated enough to go for research career. Definitely balancing research and career development, limited networking opportunities, navigating mobility and personal life, mental health and well-being. These are the few factors that is important to consider. But I'd like to highlight one point: pressure to publish. It's called the publish or perish, a culture that creates immense stress. I personally found, oh my God, last 1 year of my PhD career was like something I even couldn't have time to see my like newly born son like in 3 days. It happens in my life. So just, okay, I have to go for publication, otherwise my degree is not coming out soon. So this is actually leading some researchers to prioritize quantity over quality, which can harm long-term career prospects. I will not put that advices, but I'll give my some opinion, because I'm not at this stage to give advice to other colleagues, but let's make it like some opinion from my side for early and mid-career researchers to overcome these challenges. Let's say we should be very strategic about funding. Proactive approach always helps. We should come out from our comfort zone. We should be like more extrovert, not really introvert. We should speak more, do communication more. We should participate more spaces while we can see funding is available. At the same time, trying to embrace interdisciplinary collaboration. This really helps. Erasmus Plus program is one of the program which actually it's like multidisciplinary, we call it interdisciplinary programs that helps. So you have different community engaged and you have more, or let's say wider funding opportunities. Trying to build a strong professional network, focus on quality over quantity in publishing, and of course, maintaining a healthy work-life balance is important. So this is some of my let's say opinions for those who are like us, currently early stage researchers. Now, if we go for the future of early and mid-career researchers, okay, future is future, but definitely we should think about increasing interdisciplinary and international collaboration. Definitely research will continue to move forwards interdisciplinary and global efforts. But this will demand enhanced mobility and cross-sector collaboration. I'll put it that way, integrating academia, industry, and policymaking. So several multi-stakeholders should be involved when you plan something for future. Digital transformation in research could be one of the options. Let's say advances in artificial intelligence, big data, or utilizing digital tools. Definitely, it will transform the way currently we are having research. If unlimited resources were available, okay, this is something a dream. I don't see, at least in my professional life, I never have seen that unlimited resources are available. Let's dream that there is unlimited resources. Definitely, I would go for a global early and mid-career research support fund. This is important for this stage of life. So let's say a dedicated fund to provide research grants, fellowships, mobility scholarships with a focus on researchers from underrepresented regions. This is important. Eliminating someone from the global perspective will not help. So this would eliminate financial barriers, enabling researchers to focus on impactful work rather than worrying about funding uncertainties. This will help. At the same time, maybe what Gian Maria introduced to us, a global mentorship network, a structured mentorship program connecting researchers with senior researchers, industry leaders, policymakers, providing guidance to career development research impact is important. Thanks to Marie Curie Alumni, they are really on it and they are helping a lot, following the EU-centric perspective mostly. But now we are global. We are getting global. I'm also a true member, let's say, a proud member of Marie Curie Alumni Networks. That's why I'm also highlighting this thing. At the same time, we could think about skill development and training hubs. This is important. There is no, let's say, boundary or limitation how much we could achieve or we could gain. The more we are getting, the more are helping. At the same time, that other colleagues mentioned, like mental health and well-being programs. I do see that this would address the mental health challenges that are prevalent among researchers, fostering a healthier and more productive community. And finally, just one thing that is happening currently, offline access resources for all. There shouldn't be any limitation. There shouldn't be any payment, blah, 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 because at this stage, we don't have a lot of money to spend on this. So it should be really offline access resource for all. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ashiqur. Actually, one of the questions or one of the comments that has come out is potentially that last question should have been more about if you had no resources, what would you do? And I think that was Rutherford, I think, who said, we have no money, so therefore we have to think. So I'll put that one down for next year. So thanks for that suggestion, Colin. So that really brings us to the end of the panel. I would just like to thank Kristie, Jordan, Gian, and Ashiqur so much for all their valuable insights. And I do hope that everyone has got some good takeaways from this session. I'm pretty sure that the recording of this session will be available. And I know that Kristie's already replied to one question saying that she'll meet with someone who's got a question around how you balance your life, how do you actually fit time in to do some research when you're so busy doing all these other things. So what I'm going to do now is hand over to Nishant. There is one question, Nishant, that you might be able to answer, which is one around advice or guidance for ECRs to join a consortia that's part of Horizon Europe. So I might just sign off with that and hand over to Nishant, and then we get to listen to Victoria. So thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Thank you very much, Jane. And thank you to our amazing panel, Maria, Jordan, Kristie, and Ashiqur. I didn't really want to stop you guys from speaking about all these points because it was so intriguing. I mean, this is the 4th day that I'm running this event, and it's one of the favorite panel that I had, of course. So well done on all your advices that you have been giving. And I see some very pertinent questions, and I didn't really want to speak because I wanted the panelists to speak on this, because there are 2 things that I see I can maybe speak 1 or 2 minutes on, because of course there was a comment where we recently saw there was an elimination of humanities and social sciences from Marston and Catalyst in New Zealand. Maybe I can just plug something there. So there is a lot of misconception with regards to EU funding, and especially Horizon Europe. And I'm connecting this with another question about Horizon Europe and early career researcher participation. If you look at the Marie Curie funding program itself, the second, specifically to the postdoctoral fellowship, the second most funded domain is social sciences and humanities. Okay, so there you have something that is available for a large segment of people. Please bear in mind the postdoctoral fellowship, whether it be European fellowship, it is open for researchers of any nationality. Whether you are joining from Europe, then you would be looking at maybe also the global fellowship. One component of that is Marie Curie. And then the ERC. I don't know if you were able to join day 2. For the ERC, there are 3 domains, and social sciences and humanities is in itself a domain which has several panels in it, which means that there are a lot of opportunities. And for ERC, you could be from researcher from any nationality. So as a researcher, as an ECR or EMCR, there are a lot of opportunities that are there outside of your own country as well. Look at internationally, because a lot of the discussion was on this as well in terms of international collaboration. Now, in terms of how do you get involved with Horizon Europe, as I said, day 2, the recordings will be available. We did discuss a lot on Pillar 1, Pillar 2. Pillar 1 was where Marie Curie was discussed, European Research Council grants were discussed. Pillar 2 was where consortium building was discussed. So if you did miss that, please wait for us, and we'll be publishing the recording. Having said that, I mean, there are 2 ways in which you look at Pillar 1. Pillar 1 is more researcher-centric. Pillar 2 is more institution-centric. So if you really want to explore more on this, do write me an email, and I'll be more than happy to set up a meeting, and then we can discuss this, okay? Because I'm really wary that I don't want to take away time from our excellent speaker who is going to be speaking on a topic which is very important for early and mid-career researchers. So I think I'll stop speaking on that here, and that will give way to a very special session that we are bringing together in collaboration with Taylor and Francis. And we are very happy that we have again joining us from Stockholm, Ms. Victoria Babbitt. Victoria is the Director of Researcher Development and Outreach at Taylor and Francis. We did organize this 4 years ago in the first year of EURAXESS Australia and New Zealand. And we saw that the recording was viewed so many times that we thought this really needs to be refreshed. And because for sure in these 4 years, things would have changed, there are updates that needs to be provided. So what better than inviting Victoria to speak on this? I think I'll stop speaking and I'll pass the presenter privilege to you, Victoria. Over to you.
Yeah, I was just saying hello, everyone, and thanks, Nishant. It's great to be here. Let me just share my screen, get started. Great. All right. Wonderful. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about academic publishing. We've been hearing from the perspective of active researchers. I'm going to be talking from the perspective of a publisher. And most of this advice and guidance is based on what we see as publishers, what our editors see. So I'm trying to bring some of that knowledge and share it with you. I would say that this talk will probably be more of interest to early career researchers, but mid-career researchers might find something of interest here too. So today I am going to be discussing how to identify quality journals, and how you can succeed in your objectives of getting published. So we're going to look at all the elements of finding a good fit for your research, as well as how to avoid publishing in low quality or predatory journals. And then we'll discuss what you need to consider when you're preparing your manuscript, and then finish off with how to navigate the peer review process. So let's get started. I'm actually going to begin with a crucial step in the research and publishing process, and that is understanding what you're doing and why and who you would like to communicate with. So making clear decisions and smart strategies at the very beginning will significantly improve your chances of being published in a journal. And it all starts with choosing a topic that will be relevant to an international community, if that's your target. And this means keeping up to date with the current literature, what key scholars are working on, and we've heard a lot about networking and kind of creating those broad international connections, and that will, of course, help you with that. And attending as many conferences as possible. And then when choosing a topic and deciding upon case studies and data sets, et cetera, it's perfectly fine to work with local or regional examples, but it is important to show why those examples or data might be of interest to an international audience. So you could consider comparative studies or engaging with and developing further well-established models or theories. The main question you should be asking yourself at this stage is who outside of my local community would be interested in this research paper? Now, another of the challenges authors have, especially those who are just starting out, is communicating their research findings in a manner that is accessible and in line with how most researchers in their field present their findings. And in fact, one of the main reasons articles might be rejected is that peer reviewers and editors determine that it's not a true journal article. So what do they mean by that? It could be that what has been submitted to the journal is more similar to a condensed thesis or a book chapter. So it's covering too many different points, it's unfocused, and it's lacking the structure of a journal article. Or it could be that it's too journalistic, so it's more of an example of public scholarship. So basically, the piece of writing is not a journal research article in terms of either the structure or the language, or it could be a combination of both. So before you begin investigating possible journal options for your work, it is essential to spend some time understanding your current project and the audience you would like to reach. And throughout your career, you're likely to be involved in many different types of research, which will lead you to produce a variety of content. And earlier we heard about real-world impact, and to achieve real-world impact, you might be thinking of completely different types of content. Now, typically people focus on the research article, but you may publish review articles, whether that's a literature or theory review or a systematic review, a position piece, a case study, a data note, etc. There's all sorts of article types that are popping up, especially with the emergence of open science. And sometimes your work will be written for specialists in your field, but you may also choose to engage in public scholarship, so writing for the general public, which we saw was so important during the pandemic. And sometimes it will be for a local audience, and sometimes you're going to hope to reach an international audience. So again, just take that time to determine what your objectives are at the beginning. It's also really important to understand what's expected of you, what the particular requirements are in your current position. So, are you required to publish research articles? Likely. But for some of you, there might be an expectation that you're going to write a book and then turn those various chapters into articles in the coming years. Is there an expectation that you'll collaborate with your advisor and be a co-author? And if so, what does that actually mean in practice? So once you've determined your objectives and understand what's required of you, then you can begin considering where to publish. And when you begin investigating the appropriate place to publish, remember that you're joining an ongoing conversation in your field. So you want to make sure that you're contributing thoughtfully to that conversation. Now, we've asked our editors over the years for their top reasons for rejecting articles, and all of them tell us that the number one reason that they reject articles is that the article in question is not a good fit for the journal, whether that's in terms of the topic or the article type. So again, I keep saying this over and over again, you'll get tired of hearing me say this, but choosing the appropriate journals to submit your work to is incredibly important. And identifying potential journals to publish in, especially when you're starting out, can be really challenging. So there are many different indexes out there, but today I thought I would show you a couple of the most relevant indexes in terms of coverage. So I'm going to show you the Web of Science Journal Master List and the Directory of Open Access Journals, the DOAJ. And then I'm going to just show you our website, just to show you what publisher, the type of information you can find on publishers' websites. So I'm going to show you quickly how you can identify quality journals in your area that might be a good fit for exploring further. So let me just pop out of here and move over to the Clarivate site. Can you see this?
Yes.
This website. Yeah. Okay, great. So this is the Clarivate Master Journals list. And as you see up here, I'm logged in. But even if you don't have access to this resource, a subscription to this resource, there's still a lot of functionality that you'll be able to use. So here they've got a couple things I want to point out. The first one is this match manuscript function. Now, a lot of publishers have this too. Taylor and Francis has one. But these are really great tools where you can cut and paste your abstract into a field and then click on Find Journals. And then they'll kind of provide a list of journals that might be a good fit for your work based on the language that you use in your abstract. But here we're just going to search via the normal method here. And we're going to search for geography because I'm an ex-geographer. And here you'll see a nice results page. And there's a lot of different filters, excuse me, that you can use here. You can sort by relevancy or alphabetically. I think relevancy is the best way to search. And then you can filter by the types of coverage that the Web of Science has. You can filter by whether or not it is listed in the Directory of Open Access Journals, but we're going to look at that directory, so we'll look at that later. You can search by category, and sometimes for these big fields like geography, that covers everything from human geography, GIS to physical geography, it can be good to refine a little bit more. You can search by country or region, language, frequency, or journal citations reports. And that basically means, does it have an impact factor or not? But here we're going to take a look at the geography, the top one here. And here you're going to see a lot of great information right at the start. First of all, you're going to see who the publisher is and the address for that publisher. You're going to see the ISSN, what collection it's included in, and so forth. But then if we click on View Profile Page, it will take you to another page that gives you even more information. And here you've got direct links to the journal website as well as the publisher website. And I'll explain why that's important a little bit later. And, you know, how long it's been publishing since 1901, how many issues a year, where it's published out of. And again, the different types of coverage in the Web of Science, if that's of interest. And down here, normally you see the impact factor, but for some reason, the last few times I've been popping on this site, it hasn't been showing. But normally you would see the impact factor there. And then they've got another metric that they've introduced here, the journal citation indicator. And then down here, you'll have information about peer review. Number one, if they've got the reviewer recognition, how many claimed reviews are on Web of Science. And at the very bottom, you'll find information about other places it's indexed. For instance, is it indexed in PubMed? And also who actually owns the journal. So it's owned by the Geographical Association of London. So that's what the Web of Science looks like and the type of information you can find there. And again, if you look back, if you're looking for geography journals, oops, went back too far. If you're looking for geography journals, you can see they have 705 geography journals to choose from, again, needing to filter down into those specific areas of interest. So the reason why the Web of Science is a good starting place is because if you're unaware of key publishers and journals, it's got great coverage there. And the Web of Science has a number of indexes. So you'll probably be familiar with the Science Citation Index, and then there's the Social Science Citation Index, a bit of a tongue twister this early. And then there's the Emerging Sources Citation Index. And the great thing about the Web of Science is that it's got a strict assessment process for all the journals that they include. So there are 24 areas of criteria, including those that are on the slide here. So as we saw, there was that basic publication information. So you've had the journal title, publisher ISSN, and importantly, the contact details for the journal and the publisher. There are article titles and abstracts in English, although the content itself in the articles can be any language. They want to see presence of a peer review policy on the journal website that's easily discoverable. They want to see timeliness of publication, so they don't want big gaps in between the publication of articles or issues. The content needs to be quality and high quality and of relevance to the community it's purporting to serve. And then the websites need to have good functionality, and they want really key information about both the editorial board and the authors. Importantly, their affiliation details. Now, the next database I wanted to show you is the DOAJ. And for those of you who might be unfamiliar with open access, when articles are published open access, it means that they're accessible to everyone to read and download. But I think most of you will be familiar with open access at this point in time. So publishing open access has many different benefits. Obviously, since everyone can access the article, it's likely that the open access articles will have greater impact. And in fact, we do see that articles published open access with Taylor and Francis do typically receive about 32% more citations and over 6 times as many downloads. So there is obviously going to be an effect of making your work absolutely accessible to anyone. Now, not only can the articles have impact within the academic community, they can also have more real-life impact because journalists and policymakers and the general public will be able to access and read those articles. So something for you to consider when choosing to publish. So back to the DOAJ. Currently, there are over 21,000 journals indexed in the DOAJ, and each journal goes through a rigorous evaluation process, just like the Web of Science. Before they're included in the database. And then actually about 5 years ago, they completely cleared out the database and made everybody reapply for it. And they had kind of included more rigorous categories for to be assessed for each of the journals. So here are the categories that they're looking at. And as you can see, there are OA specific categories such as OA policy and licensing terms. Some of the journals receive a DOAJ seal, which means that they are the gold standard of open access in terms of digital preservation, persistent identifiers, comprehensive metadata submitted to the DOAJ, licensing type and information, and that authors will retain copyright and that there's self-archiving policies. So let's take a look at the DOAJ. And I have to say, this is my favorite website. I think they redesigned it last year, and I think they did a really nice job with it. So you can see on this landing page, there's lots of information there. Over 89 languages represented, over 136 countries. There are over 13,000 journals without fees, and you can search for that. And as said, there's over 21,000 journals in the database. So let me just look under subject, but you can see you can search many different ways there. And again, we're going to look for geography just to compare what the information you can find on these different websites. So here you've got over 1,300 journals that are associated with the term geography. It'll be quite a broad selection of journals, and you can filter them in many different ways here at the top, but we're sticking with subject. And then they've got some really great filters here. Number one, you've got filters so you can search for journals without article processing fees, with a DOAJ seal, or whether or not authors can retain their rights. Again, you can filter more by specific subject areas there. And then you can filter by languages, and you can see they've got an excellent representation of languages. English obviously being the most dominant, but then Spanish and Portuguese following. As in South America, they've got a long tradition of open access publishing, so there's plenty of journals there. You can filter by the type of license they offer, the different publisher. I'm going to filter there just by S. And publishers' countries, peer review types, so a lot of different peer review types represented there, and then when they were added. So we'll just look here. We'll take this first journal here, Big Earth Data. Again, some nice information just on the landing page here, the different subject areas that the journal covers, a link to the website here, the APC prices here, information about retention of rights and the different licenses that they use. So we'll just click further onto that page. And you'll see right at the top that there's a link both to the journal website and the ISSN portal. And then again, a link to the publisher's website here, the licenses, a lot of this information that was on that landing page. But some of the other information that you can find here that I find really useful is they've got direct links to the aims and scope statement, instructions for authors, editorial board. So you can use this as just kind of a gateway to all that information. They've got publication times, and then where the articles are archived in, and their deposit policy, where you can find their deposit policy. So again, a lot of great information on that website, and many different journals within the subject of geography, if you're a geographer, that you can take a look at. Great. So once that you found a couple of journals that you think would be a good fit for your work, you do need to investigate further to make sure the journals you're choosing are truly of high quality. And unfortunately, in recent years, predatory publishers have managed to get their journals indexed in respected databases. So it's always a good idea to kind of cross-check and make sure that the journal possesses all of the characteristics of a quality publication. And your first stop should be the journal website. So let me just take a quick tour of our website. Again, I'm showing you Taylor and Francis' website, but this is going to be similar information that you would find in any kind of major publisher's website. So here is the landing page for our website, and you'll see you can just kind of click on any of these different areas to search. But again, we're going to stick with geography, and there we go. Geography as a subject, and that will lead to the search results here. And as you can see on the website, we've got it broken down by articles, journals, or special issues, but we're interested in journals. So we've got over 200 journals under geography. And you can just kind of scroll down till you find a journal of interest. I'm going to look at my old society journal here, the Annals of the American Association of Geographers. And this brings you to the landing page. So there's a lot of information you can find here. You've got a link to the open access policy. You've got a link to the society's website. But then as you come down here, you'll find a lot of information. I just want to highlight a few things that you should be looking at. Here you've got a direct link to the submission site, but you've also got a link to the instructions for authors, which I'll discuss a little bit later, and to the editorial policies. And you'll find with most publishers, they'll have editorial policies for all of their journals. It's the same for Taylor and Francis. So if you click on that, you'll see all of the different policies for different aspects of both research and publishing. So our policies around affiliation, competing interests, peer review, plagiarism, etc. And you can click on those and find more information there. But then if we want to look at a little bit more information about the journal, you've got the aims and scope statement, which I'll talk about in just a second, but you'll also find a lot of information about the different metrics for the journal. So not only usage, how often people are downloading articles and that sort of thing, but citation metrics. And then importantly for most researchers in this day and age, speed and acceptance rates. So here you've got the different times from submission to first decision, submission to first post review decision, etc., and then the acceptance rate there. You've got the editorial board information, and as you see, there's affiliations here. And then this one is nice because it's also has the address for the editorial office, more information about abstract and indexing, open access policy, and information about the association and the different journals that they have. So plenty of information that you can find on a publisher website. But before I move on, I wanted to just briefly discuss predatory publishing. Many, if not all of you, will be aware of predatory publishers. It's become a huge issue globally. These entities are presenting themselves as legitimate publishers, editors, and journals, and they seek to exploit the legitimate open access publishing model. And unfortunately, they've become quite sophisticated in their methods. We see a lot of people getting caught out by this. It can be very easy to mistake a predatory journal for a legitimate one. So it's important to really research your journal, as I've been saying, especially if you are contacted by a journal out of the blue asking you to submit an article. So predatory publishers will flood your email inboxes with invitations to publish your articles with them. However, often the journals in question will be well outside of your research area. So take a look at the this example here on the slide in the bottom left-hand corner. This is actually an email my partner received last year, and it's from a medical journal interested in publishing his research, which focuses on financial economics and asset pricing. So not really a great fit for a medical journal. So predatory publishers have many characteristics in common. Their websites contain incorrect or misleading information. For instance, they'll copy established journal names and website design, but they'll include some small differences, such as a slight difference in the subtitle of the journal. The editorial boards will feature names of well-established researchers, but these researchers have never agreed to be on the board. And in fact, we have found some examples of editorial boards comprised of movie stars. So Brad Pitt as the editor-in-chief and, George Clooney as the book's editor. They also promise very fast peer review and publishing time. So they'll promise a publication within a week, which for any of you who have published before, that's unrealistic. And crucially, the peer review process often doesn't happen, or it's fabricated in some way. And lastly, and what is most damaging to researchers is often they have confusing or unclear information about their publication fees. So someone will publish with one of these journals and suddenly they get an invoice for for a publication fee. So it can be really challenging, especially for early career researchers. So as mentioned, to avoid publishing in predatory journals, the best thing you can do is just do your research, check the website to see if the journal's indexed. And if you're unfamiliar with the journal or the publisher, remember to double check on that index site. And if it says, if you find the journal, it says it has an impact factor, it's a good idea to go to the Web of Science to see if the journal is indexed. And if you find it in the Web of Science, find the name of the journal in the Web of Science, click on that link that I showed you, the link to the journal website, and make sure it directs you back to that original website you were looking at. You can also look at the content. You know, is it high quality? Is it understandable with correct grammar and copy editing? And check out those editorial policies that I just showed you. Number one, do they have any? And if they do, are they robust and clear and easy to find? And definitely don't forget your local community, your colleagues, and your librarians. See if they've heard of the journal or publisher before, and if they've had any experience publishing in the journal. And then lastly, I just wanted to highlight a resource, which is Think, Check, Submit. They have created a great resource, which is a toolkit for investigating journals covering many of the different topics that I've discussed today. So it's a fantastic resource. So as said, many people are being caught out by predatory publishers. So, you know, what do? First of all, if you do end up by publishing with a predatory publisher, there are a few things you can try. First of all, try not to be embarrassed. The communications and websites are designed to deceive you into thinking that they are legitimate publishers. But once you become aware that you've published with a predatory publisher, contact your institution because they may be able to pressure the journal into removing your article. However, if the journal doesn't respond, and unfortunately this is quite common, there may be additional legal steps that can be taken. It is important that you do not resubmit your paper to another journal until the situation has been resolved with the predatory journal, and if your paper has been removed from their website. And if you manage to get your paper removed, you can then submit to another journal, but you must tell the editor, usually via a covering letter, what happens so that they can make an informed decision. So you need to let them know that you had originally submitted accidentally to a predatory journal, but the paper has been removed, and then they can make that informed decision about your paper. Okay, so back to finding a good journal for your work. Once you've identified some high quality candidates, you need to do a final check to make sure your paper will be of interest to the editors. First, take another look at that content to see if they're publishing similar articles in terms of topic methodologies and article type. And when you're checking out the editorial board, take time to explore what type of research the editors are involved with. Is it similar or within the same area as yours? That might be a good indication of a good fit. And also when you're exploring the journal website, check to see if there's any call for papers. There might be one that aligns with the type of work you're currently doing, and that can be a really good way to get into the publishing game. But the best place to get a sense of whether your work would be of interest is the aims and scope statement on the journal website. So aims and scope statements are designed to give librarians, students, researchers, and potential authors a clear understanding of what the journal is about and the type of research that they're interested in publishing. So I'm going to show you a couple examples here. Here's an example from education, and this is our open access education journal, Cogent Education. And as you can see, the journal has a very broad scope. First of all, they are a multidisciplinary journal, and they're interested in articles from across the breadth of educational research. And then they list the different sections in the journal in the aims and scope with links to those sections. And each of those sections will have a short description of the type of research that the section focuses on. So with this journal, most researchers in education could probably submit their work as it has such a broad scope. The next journal is the African Education Review, and it also has a fairly broad scope, but it's slightly more focused. So first of all, this statement provides some history about the journal before describing the type of research that they would like to publish. And here they're interested in debates on theory, policy, and practice, and welcome research that is cross, inter, and transdisciplinary. However, they have highlighted a few areas of particular interest, such as research on higher education that focuses on issues and challenges facing the different tiers of education on the African continent, as well as in the global context. So again, a fairly broad scope, but you would need to investigate further before submitting your work to make sure that it would be a good fit. And then lastly, we have a journal with a little bit tighter scope, and that is the Journal of Education Policy. And I have to say, this is one of the most descriptive aims and scope statements I've ever seen. So this journal is interested in a particular type of theoretical research that focuses on policymaking, impact, and implementation. But in the second paragraph, they actually describe what they mean by that, which is novel. And then they even highlight the different types of theoretical frameworks that they're interested in publishing. They then go on to stress the importance of relevance to a global audience and that the national case studies must be conceptually or methodologically, I can't speak this morning, of interest to a global community. And then lastly, they speak of the requirements of empirical research. So again, this journal has a much tighter scope than the previous two, but as you can see, all of these journals have the word education in their title, but they're interested in publishing very different types of research. And the reason why I showed 3 different examples is because I often receive emails from authors saying, I'm really confused. I've submitted my article to all of these journals and everyone's rejected me, DES rejected me. And then I'll look at the article and I'll look at the journals that they've submitted to. And while the journals might broadly be in their subject area, their article didn't fit the aims and scope of each of those journals. It might have been an education, a journal about an article about education, but it wasn't meeting kind of the goals of each of those journals. So again, it's important that you take the time to carefully read the aims and scope statements before you submit your paper to a journal. Now, I've already mentioned this, but along with the aims and scope statements, it's a good idea to look at what's been published in the journal in the past, say, 3 to 5 years and ask yourself, does my research fit in the journal? And the reason why I say the past 3 to 5 years is journals do change their aims and scope over time. So you want to make sure that your journal reflects what your article is fitting with what they are currently publishing. And if you find research that is similar to yours, you should consider referencing it. Remember, you're joining an ongoing conversation in your field and in that journal. And then lastly, as I said, take a look at the editorial board of the journal, because this does give you a sense of what type of research they're interested in publishing. Editorial boards are built to reflect the ambitions of a journal. So if they're interested in publishing research in a particular area, they will try to appoint someone to the board that is a specialist in that area, because they can act as an ambassador for the journal and help with peer review, because they're going to know all the key figures in that research area. And the same is true with geography. If a journal is interested in receiving more research from a specific country, they'll try to appoint someone based there to help increase the submissions of articles from institutions in those regions. Now, what I would recommend is that you choose a few journals that you think would be a good fit for your work, and you can create a list and rank them from your #1 choice down. And when it comes time to submit, start with that top choice. And if for some reason the journal's not interested in publishing your work, move on to your #2 choice, and so on and so forth until your article is accepted. It's all about having a clear strategy at the start of the process and just acting on it. Now, prior to submitting your work, it is imperative that you read and follow the instructions for authors. Every journal will have what they call an instructions for authors or author guidelines. And you can always find these on the journal website. I showed you that on our website. And these are the rule books for the journal. So under the instructions for authors, you're going to find information on APCs and waivers for open access and any other fees the journal might have. Some journals, for instance, within economics, often have submission fees. Some journals have page fees. All of that information should be clearly listed on the site. There'll be information about the peer review process for the journal, the types of articles they accept, and the word limits for those articles. There might be some reporting guidelines, especially for medical titles. And there will be information about how you should prepare your manuscript, so formatting, headings, reference style, etc. And then there will also be information about data sharing policies, and then any other relevant information, such as similarity checks and that sort of thing that are conducted upon submission. Now, communicating your research in a clear and accessible manner will help you successfully navigate the publishing process. And obviously, we're not going to do a writing workshop today, but I just wanted to highlight a few things for you to think about when you're putting your manuscript together. First of all, to gain a good understanding about how to communicate your research effectively, I suggest you read a lot. And of course, you're all academics, so you spend all of your time reading. But the absolute best thing you can do to become a great writer is to read other great writers in your field. Find those researchers who communicate their work in a way that resonates with you. I had a couple of favorites when I was in grad school that really kind of inspired me. You can see how they structure their papers and their arguments, how they present their data, etc. And then, as said, take inspiration from them while you're developing your own distinct style. And remember, simplicity is key, especially when you're dealing with complex problems and theories. So think about your sentence structure and your use of the passive voice. I always recommend that sentences should be kept relatively short. Otherwise, the reader may lose track of your point. And you should also think about kind of varying the lengths of your sentences to create a bit of rhythm in your writing. It makes it just a little bit more pleasant to read. Now, passive voices in sentences is sometimes necessary, such as in method sections where it's common to write the research was conducted rather than I conducted the research. However, just make sure to mix it up with the active voice. The goal here is to make it as easy as possible for the reader to understand your arguments and the evidence that you're providing. And the most important strategy to achieving this is to create a clear and easy to follow structure for your paper. And what that structure is will depend upon the type of research you're engaged with. So for empirical work, that would be the IMRAD model. So introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And then for theoretical work, the structure can vary, but it is incredibly important that you create a sensible and clear structure that will allow readers to easily follow your arguments. Along with the text, you'll want to ensure that all of your figures and tables are formatted in an accessible style and that your descriptions are clear and descriptive. If you're using images, you need to ensure that the image is high quality and meets the requirements of the journal in terms of pixelation. Also, if you're using anyone else's images or data, you must obtain written permission before you submit to the journal. That's your responsibility as an author. And increasingly, journals are encouraging authors to make their data available, and many funders are now requiring this. And this is perhaps true with open access journals and platforms. And obviously, we don't have time today to go into a full discussion about data, but you'll find information about the FAIR principles and journal policies on our website if you're interested. And lastly, I think it's useful to remember your role is that of a storyteller. It's up to you to give life to the exciting story of your research and translate the passion you have for the subject to the paper in an easy to follow manner so that people can enjoy. Now, apart from the paper, a really important element is the abstract. The abstract is often the first thing an editor or potential peer reviewer or reader will look at to assess whether the article is of interest. So it's a good idea to spend time writing and refining your abstracts. And here are just a few basic suggestions for you. First of all, it's difficult to write a decent abstract before you actually finish the paper, as the abstract is an overview of the content. So best to wait until you're done, although you can be making notes throughout if that helps. You want to make sure that you know the parameters for the particular journal you're submitting to, because most do have word counts. It's usually around 250 to 300 words, and some have really specific guidance on format and structure. And then you want to think about your potential audience and write it for them, because if you are hoping to reach practitioners, for instance, you might use slightly different language than if you were hoping to reach researchers that were deeply embedded in that particular area. And then after you've written your first draft, go through and remove any unnecessary words. I always think it's good to just do a free write, but then you need to go through and kind of refine that, focusing on that essential information. And it's a good idea to include some keywords. These act like little flags for search engines, helping people to find your work. So think about those words that really capture your research project. And if you end up revising your paper after you've written the abstract, which is likely during the peer review process, it's a good idea to go back and review and revise the abstract as well, because you might have made some key changes in your paper that need to be reflected in the abstract. And lastly, read it out loud and have others read it for fluency. If your abstract is difficult to read, it's unlikely that people will click through to the article because they'll imagine the article is poorly written as well. I'd like to just take a quick minute to discuss some issues that we see with publishing ethics. Unfortunately, publishing ethics issues are just on the rise. Almost every publisher is building out ethics teams to deal with it. And on the screen, you'll see a list of issues, not complete, unfortunately. And these are the issues that we see on a regular basis. So the first couple of columns in green, many of these problems are often due to lack of full understanding or maybe confusion around standards and policies. For instance, proper use of AI has become a big issue, authorship criteria, non-financial conflicts of interest, etc. But some of these can have elements of conscious misconduct as well. As we move into the middle yellow columns, these are areas where we can see intentional misconduct, but there can be some areas of misunderstanding too. And then once we get into the third row of red, these are conscious and very serious misconduct issues designed around manipulating the publishing process. Now, obviously, we don't have time to go through all of these today, but I thought I'd take you through some of the authorship issues we see on a regular basis. Oh, it looks like the top of my slide is grayed out there. Sorry about that. Authorship disputes are quite common, and they tend to slow down the publishing and peer review process because we as publishers and our editors don't know what happened in the writing process, so we can't really help out with this. So basically what we say to the authors is, you need to sort this out and come back to us with a written agreement. And often the issues have to do with disagreements over who's included on the authorship line, the sequence of names, and who's responsible for the different parts of the process. So to avoid any problems, it's really important that you have a written agreement between all of the co-authors regarding the responsibilities, the sequence of names on the authorship line, and what journal you're going to submit to. Now, apart from the authorship issues, disputes, there are three distinct issues that we're seeing on a regular basis. The first is ghost authorship. And this is when a significant contribution has been made to a manuscript without acknowledgement of who made that contribution. So they don't show up on the authorship line. And this is an issue because we can't know if there was a conflict of interest. The next one we see quite often is guest authorship. And this is when authorship is granted to an individual who doesn't meet the ethical standards for authorship. And they're usually included on the authorship line because of their seniority, their reputation, or supposed influence. And this has been common in some institutions, but anyone on the authorship line should have made a significant contribution to the paper, as they'll be held responsible for it in the future. And then lastly, we have the growing problem of authorship for sale. So over the past, I guess, 3 years or so, we've seen a rising number of cases where paper mills they've emerged. And these are businesses that offer to add an author's name to a paper after it's been accepted, or sometimes during the peer review process. And these are huge businesses, and I'm sure all of you have seen reports of the mass retractions. Those retractions are due to these paper mills. And these actors are preying on the desperation of scholars who are under so much pressure to publish more and more articles to progress in their careers. So it's a huge problem that publishers and institutions and funders are all working together to try and solve, but it's something to be aware of. So who qualifies as an author? So on this slide, I have listed all of the areas that each author should have either participated in or agreed to. But here are the main aspects to remember when it comes to authorship. Any listed author is a representative of the published paper and shares accountability. And corresponding authors sign author publishing agreements on behalf of co-authors. And authorship comes with responsibility. I think that, that's the important point to remember here. And following on from authorship, we have been obviously receiving many questions about the use of generative AI and whether, as well as how, it can be used in the research and writing process. And as you all will be aware, this is a very quickly changing area, but I thought I would just briefly share with you how publishers are thinking about the use of AI in research communications. Keep in mind, each publisher and journal might have slightly different policies, so it is your responsibility to review those policies on the publisher website before you submit your article. But authors basically are responsible for ensuring that the content of their submissions meets the required standards of rigorous scientific and scholarly assessment, research, and validation, and is created by the author. There is a general acceptance of using AI as an author tool to refine or correct or edit and format a text. And what we mean here is using AI to help clean up the language of the paper. And much of this functionality is built into the tools we use daily. And then there are other tools such as Grammarly that people might use to polish their text. In some cases, AI can be used to assist in creating content, especially in the case of articles exploring AI. However, it is important to note that some journals may not allow the use of generative AI tools beyond that language improvement. Therefore, authors are advised to consult with the editor of the journal prior to submission. And use of generative AI beyond those specific cases, for instance, if you were to use AI to write a portion of your paper, would need to be fully disclosed to an editorial team, and permission would be required before you were to submit the paper to that journal. What is not permitted in any case is the use of generative AI to create, alter, or manipulate data and results in a paper. And lastly, AI cannot be listed as an author because, as we just discussed, authorship comes with legal responsibilities, which need to be agreed to by a human being. Authors must clearly acknowledge within the article or book any use of generative AI tools through a statement which includes the full name of the tool used with the version number, how it was used, and the reason for the use. For article submissions, this statement must be included either in the methods section or in the acknowledgement section. And then the editor and the peer reviewers can assess the article and take into consideration the use of AI and determine whether or not they feel that it is appropriate for the paper. All right, so submitting your article, here are just a few different issues to keep in mind prior to submitting. First of all, in most cases, you'll be submitting to an online system, so make sure to have all the files on hand that you need to submit, so your figures and tables and any other data files which may make up your submission. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're using images or data that is not yours, make sure that you have obtained permission before you submit. That's your responsibility. You want to make sure to include any necessary documentation, such as disclosure statements or competing interest statements if they're relevant to your project. And then many journals and systems require ORCID IDs. And if you don't have one yet, I encourage you to get one. It only takes a couple minutes to register. And then to avoid any problems or mistakes, make sure that you have that agreed upon plan with your co-authors on who's responsible for what and which journal you're submitting to. Also, make certain that you have their correct information, the correct information of all your co-authors, including the preferred spelling of their name, their email address, and their affiliation. And lastly, I know this sounds silly, but make sure the version you submit is the final version and not an earlier draft. This happens quite often where people submit a draft, the paper goes through peer review, they wait, the paper's rejected, and then they look at the draft that they submitted and realized it was the wrong draft. So take that extra 5 to 10 minutes to ensure that all of your files are the most current. And lastly, we're going to talk a bit about peer review. And I really like this quote because I think it captures the importance of peer review. Not only is it quality control, but it's a form of collaboration between researchers. And researchers agree that peer review is an essential part of the process. So this chart, I need to switch it out because it's getting a little bit old, but it's from a massive 2018 peer review study that was conducted by Publons. And here you can see that the majority of researchers find peer review either important or extremely important. Peer review is where papers are assessed for all the different elements that we've been discussing today. You know, is the article a good fit? Does it follow our guidelines? Is the research novel? Is it making a contribution? Does the evidence support the findings? Is it well written, etc.? Peer review helps to improve the research and communications of the findings through recommendations. And peer review validates the research. The editors and peer reviewers, when they're accepting a paper, are giving it a stamp of approval, confirming that it is sound science. So let's just take a look at what peer review looks like in practice. So there are 3 different types of peer review you're likely to come across in your career. And the first is called single anonymous. And this is when the peer reviewer knows the identity of the author, but the author doesn't know the identity of the peer reviewer. And this tends to be the most common type of peer review within science, technology, and medical disciplines. The second type is double anonymous peer review. And this is when all the identities are hidden. And this tends to be the most common within arts and humanities and social sciences. However, I should say it is fairly easy to discern the identity of an author if they presented their work previously or if they're citing themselves in the paper. So if the journal is practicing double-blind peer review, double anonymous peer review, it's a good idea to anonymize your paper. So if you're citing yourself, you can just replace your name with author and then check the acknowledgement section to make sure that there's nothing identifying you there. Lastly, there is open peer review where all identities are known. And keep in mind, there are many varieties of open peer review, from the very basic where everyone's identity is known to a completely open process where the public can see the submitted version of the article, all of the peer reviewers and authors' comments, and the different versions of the paper. So make sure to review the instructions for authors before you submit, so you're aware of the type of peer review that the journal is conducting and that you're not surprised. So let's take a look at what peer review looks like in the process and some of the most common decisions. So once you submit your paper to a journal, the editorial office will review your submission and decide whether they should send it to the editor. Now, if the submission has all the required elements, they will send it to the editor. The editor will then review the submission and decide whether to send it out to external peer reviewers. And if they do send it out, they usually will choose 2 or more external experts to assess the paper and provide a report with recommendations for a decision. The editor will then read through the reports and make a decision about the paper. There are a few different decisions that can be made during this process, however, including rejection and acceptance. However, the most common decisions are desk rejection and revise and resubmit. So desk rejections occur before the paper is sent out to external peer reviewers. And these decisions are usually made by the editor, and in some cases by the editorial office. And they're usually made within 1 to 2 weeks after the submission of the paper. And desk rejections usually are due to the fact that the manuscript isn't a good fit for the journal, or maybe the quality of the writing is too poor, something along those lines. Revise and resubmit decisions are made after the paper has been peer reviewed. And these decisions are based on recommendations made by the peer reviewers, but it's always the editor's decision. This decision means that the peer reviewers and editors are interested in your work, but they feel that there are areas that could be improved. So revise and resubmit with major revisions means that there is something in your paper that the editor and peer reviewers find interesting. It could be the data you're using, your case study, your argument, your theoretical framework. It could be any number of things, but you still likely will have quite a bit of work to do. It's not guaranteed that your article will be accepted in the end. Now, revise and resubmit with minor revisions is sometimes called conditional acceptance. And this means that there are some small changes that need to be made. It might be additional citations or reformatting of a table, or maybe rewriting of a small section, something like that. Usually, if you address these changes, your paper will be accepted. Now, once you finish your revisions, you'll then resubmit to the journal, and the editor will look at the new version and will possibly send it back out to the reviewers to see if they're happy with how you address their concerns. They may ask you to make additional changes if they feel that you didn't fully address those original concerns. And this can happen a couple of times with you making revisions and the reviewers asking you to try again. And unfortunately, the bad news is that this cycle can happen 2 to 3 times, and your paper can be rejected in the end if the editor feels that you were not able to address the peer reviewer's concerns sufficiently. But I'll tell you how to avoid that in just a moment. So responding to reviewers' comments is a really important part of the publishing process. And to be honest, at times when you receive those reviewer reports, it can feel like a rejection, especially with the revise and resubmit with major revisions. Try not to become upset, but if you are upset, it's a good idea just to close your computer, go into the kitchen, make yourself a cup of tea, and forget about it for a couple of days. And when you are ready to get back to work, carefully read that decision letter from the editor, because it may include advice on how to respond to the reviewer's comments, especially if they're suggesting different things. And there will definitely be information about deadlines for returning your revisions. If you have co-authors, set up a meeting early on to review all the reviewers' comments and make certain to share all those documents with them prior to that meeting, so you can have a nice productive meeting. And then whether you have co-authors or not, carefully go through those reviewer reports and make a list with each one of their suggestions for improvement. You might want to group their recommendations based on category, literature review, method section, whatever works for you. But the most important thing is that you capture each one of their recommendations. And then you want to go through that list and decide which of the recommendations you'd like to adopt and make those changes in the paper. Now, here's the key to avoiding the fate of going through the revisions process a couple of times and still being rejected. When you send back your revisions, you must include a note to the editor clearly detailing how you've addressed each one of the peer reviewers' concerns. So where you have adopted the peer reviewers' recommendations, clearly detail what you've changed and where that change can be located in the paper. So page and line number. You can use some people highlight those sections in the paper. Some journals welcome the use of track changes to help editors and peer reviewers see what you've done, but you still do need that cover letter. Now, you're not going to agree with all of the peer reviewers' recommendations. That's totally normal. But in those cases, you need to clearly and respectfully explain why you chose not to amend your paper. So again, be specific. For instance, if they thought that you should cite another paper, but you feel that paper is out of scope of your project, you need to explain why that is so that both the peer reviewer and the editor understand your logic. And then once you've detailed how you've addressed each of the peer reviewers' comments, review your response to the editor to make sure that you've included all the recommendations and actions that you've taken, and that you've done so in a clear manner, and that the letter is professional and devoid of any frustration. This can be an incredibly challenging process, so it's understandable that you may become a bit frustrated, but it's important that that doesn't influence how you communicate with the editor. And most importantly, remember to be respectful and professional during this process. This is your community, your future network. You may end up submitting to the journal again. You may want to become a board member one day, or you may have dreams of collaborating with the individuals who are currently reviewing your paper. So keep all this in mind during the process. And remember, the editor and peer reviewers are just trying to help you publish the very best version of your work. So try not to take it personally. It's really about how you're communicating your research, not about you as a researcher. So that is it for me. I've got my contact details there if you'd like to contact me after this session, but I will stop sharing now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Victoria. I think that was an excellent session and very clear. Nobody would have imagined it's so early for you by the way you have explained everything. So very well done. I think this brings us to the end of the European Research Day for day 4. a big thank you to everyone who has joined, who has stayed till this entire 2-hour session. Tomorrow we have 2 sessions. The last day of the European Research Day is tomorrow. We have a early start at 2 p.m. Australia time, that is 4 p.m. New Zealand time, where we will discuss on EU member state Oceania research cooperation and the role of scientific diaspora. But later on at 6 p.m. Australia time, that is 8 p.m. New Zealand time, we will have the last session of the ERD, which is on PhD and postdoc opportunities in the EU member states. So you still have some time to register if you have not done so, because these are going to be really, really interesting, especially for the EMCRs. I think the second session, which is on PhDs and postdoc opportunities, might be of something that is relevant to you. Now, I think I'll let everyone go. See you again tomorrow, signing off from today. And thank you very much for your availability for these hours. It has been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Nisha.
Nisha.
Bye.